Good afternoon. I'm Alex Silverman of the M.A.T. program here at the S.I.T. Graduate Institute, and I'd like to welcome Buna Hall from our S.I.T. Study Abroad program in Senegal, and Buna is also an alum of our summer master's program. And we're here to talk about multilingualism in Senegal, Buna's home country. But Buna, I'd like to start out by asking you to tell us what languages you speak and in what situations you learned or acquired these languages.
Thanks, Alex, for asking. First of all, it's my pleasure to be here and share these moments with you. I'm going to start first with my native language. I'm a Wolof native speaker, Wolof, which is the dominant language ethnicity group in Senegal. So I speak Wolof then first, which is my mother tongue. French, that's the main language of instruction in Senegal. Along with that, I studied English at middle school and then high school and later university. Spanish as well, I speak Spanish. I speak a little bit of Arabic as a result of the Muslim culture I grew up into. I do also speak other local dialects in Senegal. Peul, which is in fact spoken mostly in West Africa. Peul, that's Fulani group, and then Mandingo.
Okay, and those two indigenous African languages, how did you come to learn those?
Interesting. I was fortunate to grow up in a multicultural environment. Being a native Wolof speaker, my dad, who was a civil servant, was sent in the interior in a different region.
Right.
So I had that chance to be in an environment where I was surrounded with Mandingo and Fulani, and this is where I studied primary school. So because of that, I was able to study and learn new languages around. So that has triggered my enthusiasm for more languages.
Right. So tell me now, in what circumstances do you use the different languages that you know?
Interesting question. Wolof is something we use at home. It's the language of communication at home between parents and family members. So we do also use Wolof in the streets, the market, when it comes to taking a taxi, bargaining. It's the main language of communication in Senegal. It's used everywhere, even in government offices, but mostly at the home place. French is used at school, in government offices when you have to interact with people overseas or talking over the phone. So we use French mainly in offices and at school. The other, English is something also we use at school, but also we do when you have to interact with overseas people, especially over the phone. We communicate in English as much as we can. Same with Spanish. We have to deal with Spanish business traders or people from Latin America. And the other local languages, Peul and Mandingo, we use them also.
Okay. Do you ever mix languages in a given conversation where you might start off in French or in Wolof and then go to the other language? And tell me about that.
Absolutely. There are a lot of switch while we speak. So we tend to speak what I call franglais when I talk to intellectual and educated people. So we shift from French with some words of English. But mainly we mix Wolof and French because some French terms are easily adapted and adopted into the Wolof culture.
Right. So and are those terms from certain topics like, I don't know, science or politics, or do the French terms that you import, are they from certain domains?
Yeah, mainly they're from the, let's say, science, politics, but also sports. Okay, sports, which is also a unifying factor.
How about like if you're talking about computers and you're in Wolof with a friend, is that vocabulary, technical vocabulary, available in Wolof?
That's, I think, the key question. There's been going on a debate, a controversial debate over language and technology. And of course, internet English is something that has been developed in the Western countries. So it's something we have imported. As such, in our Wolof language, we don't have specific terms for that. Maybe some Wolof specialists in the language have designed, are working on making up some terms that would fit. But mainly we use those, we adapt those English terms, such as computer, let's say to delete or to download, okay, mangi download or mangi send. Okay.
But you wouldn't say télécharger, the French word, or logiciel, the French word.
We use
more likely to say software and download.
Yes, software, both.
Both the French and English.
Both French and English.
Yeah.
Télécharger, supprimer, delete, cancel, okay, submit.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my case, being an English speaker and a French speaker, I tend to use a little bit of everything.
Of each.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But I used to speak with my children using saying computer. Arrêtez le computer.
Yeah.
This is something I usually go for computer instead of ordinateur.
Is that because you had some of your education in the United States and it just comes more naturally?
More naturally. That's I would say the American influence.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier for me to use the English American term rather than the French one sometimes.
Now, just now you said if you're talking to your kids, you might say arrêtez le computer.
Yeah.
But you said the French word for stop. So I was wondering, why wouldn't you tell them in Wolof, using the word computer, but the rest of the sentence in Wolof?
In Wolof, I do, yeah. You're right. Sometimes I do use French or Wolof.
Yeah.
Both.
So it's not a strict division.
Yeah.
Like you never use French at home. It's not like that.
To be honest, I use French very rarely.
Rarely at home.
Yeah, rarely at home. It depends when either I talk to my younger son or my older.
Right.
Okay, but very rarely I use French very rarely.
Yeah.
So Wolof is a
it's the natural language.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And
how about if you're talking, say, with Souley, who is the academic director of the program and a close colleague of yours for many years? Let's say you're having a conversation with him about the study abroad program coming up. You know, next month it's going to start, and you're talking business. Would it be entirely in Wolof, or would it also include some French and some English, or how? What do you think?
No, mostly when you talk business or profession, during this work we use either French or English. English is easier to use certain terms.
Right.
Okay.
Because the program has been developed by an American organization,
so it's easier to.
Yeah. And we were talking last night about how difficult it is to translate some concepts like experiential learning or cooperative learning, things like that. So it's just easier to use
feedbacks. Yeah, exactly. So some English terms we just adapt and use.
Right.
That's true. That's a very interesting question that you asked. With Souley at work, we use French or
English.
Or English when it comes to working. Work.
If you start talking with him about your family, though, would you switch to Wolof?
We go back to Wolof naturally. Yeah. Okay. That's the natural, especially when we express emotions and something like that. That's
more intimate topics.
More intimate topics.
What about literacy in Wolof?
Over the past 20 years, a lot has been written. Most people might think that Wolof is an exclusively oral language, which is true to some extent. But some educators have developed materials, written materials, and also have written books and even dictionaries in Wolof to serve the greater community of learners. Yes, there are books in Wolof.
Yeah. What about people in Dakar who go out in the morning and want to get a newspaper? Are they likely to buy a newspaper in French, in Wolof?
Most newspapers are written in French. they just go and buy the French newspaper.
Yeah.
But for those who are illiterate in French,
Right.
the possibility is to have some newspapers in the local language.
Right.
Those people have had the chance to be, let's say, to have received an education in Wolof.
Mhm.
So that's the literacy program which has been running over the past years to give more chances to early school leavers those who
I
wouldn't have the chance to be
Right.
educated in French to
Right.
still be fluent in their
Yeah.
native language.
And to be able to read and write.
To be able to
some
read,
extent.
yeah, exactly.
But normally, like when your children started school,
Mm-hmm.
well, I assume they were 4, 5, 6 years old when they started?
Five,
Around that,
five,
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
So what happened, here's something Americans have a hard time understanding,
Mhm.
maybe, is, or I do, is, so at home they've been hearing Wolof mostly growing up. Then they start school. Is the teacher now speaking French to them, which they haven't had much contact with?
Exactly.
And they just learn by exposure?
By experience, yeah, that's a very difficult transition.
Yeah,
Moving from Wolof and then all of a sudden
yeah,
having to face a situation where the person in front of you has to speak French.
right.
So because of exposure to it, and also there was the fact that we were not allowed
Yeah,
at all to use our mother tongue
in school,
in school,
yeah,
which I questioned later
yeah,
because not being able to use your mother tongue was not to me helping
right.
understand
Mhm.
most of the things teacher were saying.
Mhm.
At least try and use both
Right.
French and Wolof. That could help learning to be more effective. But we were not allowed to use,
Right.
unfortunately, French
Now,
at school.
UNESCO has recommended that literacy be taught in the home language wherever possible, for some, I think, fairly obvious reasons. That
Mhm.
it's easier to access the written system of a language you've
Mhm.
already internalized and have
Mhm.
mastered at home.
Mhm.
So has that language situation changed in primary schools at all in Senegal, where there's more Wolof being used?
More Wolof being used in rural areas.
In rural areas?
In rural areas, some are partisans of this bilingualism. Some are not in favor. They just want to stick to the French instruction
Mhm.
system and give the possibility to parents to work on the local language at home.
Uh-huh.
But the difficulty, I mean, I see, would say, two difficulties: technical difficulty and political difficulties.
Yes.
If you consider a country like Senegal, which we have about 20 ethnicity, we were lucky that Wolof, which is the dominant ethnicity, 47% of the entire population is native speaker,
Right.
but 80% of the population speak Wolof.
Mhm.
So it was easier for policymakers
Right.
just to use Wolof,
Mhm.
and luckily all the ethnicities were in line with that.
They were okay with that.
They were
They
okay
didn't
with that.
resent
It
the
didn't
fact
resent.
that one was selected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you were to use the same thing in Nigeria, where you have more than 200 languages,
Right.
it will create some difficulty
Right.
and ethnic problems
Right.
within the minority.
Mhm.
But also, the other technical factor is that you have to design materials in the native language.
Right.
That involves a lot of money. You have to train teachers
Yeah.
as well. So in Senegal, let's say people are trying to find a compromise
Mhm.
which consists in using only French
Mhm.
in the using French in the previous grades,
Right.
and then as the student as they move forward, trying to mix Wolof
Mhm.
and French
Yeah.
as well.
Wouldn't it make more sense to use Wolof early when the kids have less control of French?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is the reality.
Yeah.
Start with freshly with Wolof,
Yeah.
and then bit by bit.
Bit by bit add French and
Exactly. So that was
Move
this
over.
is the idea I was saying
Yeah.
earlier. In a different way, yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this has proved effective.
Yeah. So here's another question. had the opportunity to be on the campus of the main university in Dakar a number of times, and the doors were wide open to the classrooms, and of course I heard the professors and they were speaking French. So are the students ever at a disadvantage? Certain students, like maybe they were from rural areas where their primary and secondary education was not too strong, that when they get to the university they're at a disadvantage because maybe their French isn't as strong as other students? Does that ever happen?
No, they don't have they have another type of disadvantage because it's the same syllabus everywhere, and they're as good teachers in urban cities as in rural areas.
Okay.
So the difficulty they have for those who come from rural areas is adjusting to life in big cities.
In a big city.
In a big city.
Yeah.
Having to change the environment, having to use public transportation, for instance, or being in a new environment is now having to use new technology or stuff like that. Generally, those who have studied, who went to high school in Dakar, they have a better, they have an edge over those people who. That's true. And but now the situation is changing. The situation is changing because the rural areas also have access to technology and stuff like that.
Let me ask you another question. In India, a person who is a Hindi speaker and a person who is a Punjab speaker or some other language, sometimes when they get together, they'll use English so that one person isn't at an advantage over the other, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I see.
If you, in Senegal, if you have a Wolof, an ethnically Wolof person and a Peul, even though the Peul might speak Wolof, would they sometimes use French so that one language isn't to the advantage of one of the people?
Depending on the social, I would say, category of the person, the social status of the person. But generally, they jump into the Wolof. Into Wolof naturally, and this is widely accepted. Wolof naturally. That's the.
So it's very interesting. There's no stigma attached to it. There's no sense of, oh, this is your language. Don't enforce it on me. It's just like this is our unifying.
Language. And exactly. And the Wolof do not have a sense of domination of superiority, which is really great. So they.
That's something exceptional about Senegal.
That is exceptional.
You don't have that linguistic tension.
No, we don't have that. What is interesting is our former president, our first head of state, was of a minor ethnicity group from Serer, which was the dominant. But Senghor was the one who made it possible for Wolof to become the language of communication, which was great. So and the Serer community acknowledged that fact, and from there we were fortunate.
That is amazing.
Amazing.
So my last topic is about the future of English in Senegal, and I'm wondering if the role of English is changing because English is now so dominant in the world. My question is, do highly educated people in Senegal, like yourself, but you had the opportunity already to study here, but are some people saying, well, French isn't as relevant and as important as it used to be. English is now dominant in the world, so we need to shift over to learn more English now. Is that happening at all in Senegal?
Absolutely, absolutely. So their need and demand for English is really growing as a result of more business being done in Senegal, a lot of multinational companies. There's a lot of trades going on with overseas countries. But also, especially among the new generation, which is not really attached to France as their colonizer. So their tendency is just to study a new language, and English offers itself. So more and more Senegalese people, even if we all from a French-speaking country, tend to use English and to at least acknowledge the importance of English. So, which is not threatening the use of French. The administration will still work with.
So it's an additional language.
It is an additional.
And do you think there's any sense of hostility towards English as a symbol of American way of life or American consumer goods or American values?
This is something, let's say, people accept without fanfare. The fact that English has become an international language. There is not a feeling that there is a sort of cultural imperialism, because England or America has never colonized Senegal. So we just take it as an advantage, a comparative advantage.
Right.
In addition to French, we accept, especially as I said earlier, among the younger generation who strives for pop music or new lifestyles, but also consuming American goods and products and services, technology.
Right.
So they find it amazing that they have this language tool at their hand.
Right.
In their hand. So it's something. It's an opportunity. It's not a
Right.
difficulty,
Right.
but rather an opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah.
My last question is maybe a little strange, but having lived in France, I know that the French are very concerned about speaking the language well. So in France, for example, you will be corrected if you make an error in the wrong grammatical structure or word. I was often corrected, no, Alex, it's this, it's not that. You know, please try to respect our language, learn it as well as you can. It's a sign of respect for our culture, etc. Compared with the U.S., the U.S. is much more laissez-faire and permissive about that. If you're communicating well, people often will not bother to correct you. So I'm wondering if that French attitude was also implanted in Senegal